All right, guys, welcome back to this episode of the X-Ring. And what I'd like to do is continue the series on long distance shooting. And let's say you have your rifle, you have, your mat, your bag, or whatever you need to shoot. But let's say you want to buy a new scope, okay? Remember I mentioned do not get overly concerned with magnification. You don't need big power to shoot long distance. As long as you have something that can go up to 10 power or 15 power, you're going to be fine with it, okay? I mean, you can even do it with a 3x9. It's not a problem to do that with a 3x9 scope, but you don't want a 1:6 or 1:8. Even though it can be done, it's going to be a whole lot easier if you have something that at least goes up to that 12, 15 power range. All right, so let's say you're looking at scopes. You stop by the store one day and you're looking around and you see this, I'm going to make something up, a Night Force NXS, okay? And let's say you look at it and you're like, MOA or mil? I remember hearing something about that. That's right, there's two different measurements within scopes. You have MOAs, minute of angle, and then mil or milliradians. Don't get overly concerned with which is better than the other, because there really isn't one that's better than the other, okay? There are trends into which way it's moving, but one is just as good as the other. There are pros and cons to both of them, but you don't need to worry about, okay, this is more accurate than that one. It's not. All you need to think about is MOAs and mils. Think of them as, here's an easy analogy, miles per hour, kilometers per hour. We're going to say MOA or minutes of angle, it's going to be miles per hour, and we'll say mil or milliradians is kilometers per hour, okay? They're just units of measurement, if you will, okay? The most important thing you're going to grab from this is make sure that if you buy an MOA adjustable scope, let's say your turrets are quarter MOA clicks, make sure you have an MOA reticle. If you buy a mil scope, make sure it has a mil reticle or some type of Milliradian reticle. Doesn't necessarily have to be a mil dot, but what you don't want to, and you're going to see a lot of these because there's a lot of these in the market, an MOA scope with a mil dot reticle, okay? That would be like driving around in your car all day that only has one unit of measurement. Let's say it has kilometers per hour. You got the car from Europe or something, and every speed limit sign you see, 70 miles per hour. Well, how many kilometers is that? You can do it, but you got to do the math. So that's what you don't want. You want to be quick and efficient with this, so make sure everything matches up. So for reference, most of your MOA scopes, are going to be quarter MOA clicks. So 1 MOA equals approximately 1 inch at 100 yards. It's a little finer adjustment because if you think of it as 1 inch at 100 yards, then each click is going to be a quarter inch, okay? Pretty simple math, everybody knows that. Just think of it as a rule, and you're looking at 1 inch, you got a quarter inch, half, 3/4, 1 inch. Mils are going to be for those, think of it as metric, okay? Think of it in centimeters or meters. What you've got is you've got 1 milliradian, and then you'll have 10 tenths. So each click is going to be a tenth of a milliradian. So 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, all the way up to 10 tenths, which is 1 mil. Quarter MOA is going to be slightly finer in adjustment than a tenth of a mil. For example, 1 MOA at 1,000 yards is 10.5 inches, 10.47 inches, okay? 1 milliradian at 1,000 yards is going to be 36 inches, okay? And you're like, wait a minute, that's a whole lot finer. But you got to remember, there's only 4 clicks to most of your MOA scopes: quarter, half, 3/4, 1 MOA. Whereas each milliradian is broken down into tenths. So what you need to concern yourself with is that a quarter MOA at 1,000 yards is 2.6 inches. A tenth mil at 1,000 yards is 3.6 inches. Okay, to have that difference in adjustment is not that important at 1,000 yards because most people aren't going to hold just an inch difference. To break it down even simpler, a quarter MOA at 100 yards is going to be 0.25 inches, and then 1/10 of a mil at 100 yards is going to be 0.36 inches. So 1/4 inch as opposed to 1/3 of an inch, roughly. I'm not trying to make this difficult. I'm just trying to explain it the simplest way I know how. The reason I choose mil over MOA is because it makes more sense to me when I hear it now, even though I grew up using MOAs. You know, if you're at 600 yards, let's say you were shooting at 100 and your dope was 0-0, and you go to shoot at 600 yards, on my 308 rifle, it's like 16.5 MOAs. So it'd be 16.5 or 16.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. I had to do this all the way till I get to 16. And once I get to 16, it's going to be 16.25. That's one click, 16.50. There we go. 600 yards on my mil scope, shooting a 308, 4.8 mils. It's pretty simple. 625 yards. MOA, 17.75 inches, 17.750. Okay, 17.750 as opposed to 5.2 mils. So it's just an easy way to interpret it, for me anyway. There is not one advantage over the others. I will tell you, if you guys ever follow the Precision Rifle Series or PRS shooting, I don't know the most recent numbers, but I know over 90% of all PRS shooters, this is over 90%, shoot a mil scope with some type of mil reticle. So, like I said, it doesn't matter. Don't go out and buy new stuff if you have an MOA scope with an MOA reticle. But if you have an MOA scope and has a mil dot reticle, if you can get another scope, it'd probably be better suited. Otherwise, you're driving that car that just has the kilometers per hour and you're looking at regular mile per hour speed limit signs. And you can always convert it and do the math. It's just I'm trying to talk about which one's the simplest. So that's the quickest, fastest way I can explain the differences between the two. You don't read much into it, but you know, most spotting scopes. I want to review this spotting scope. This came up in conversation at the last the 3-gun thing that we did on Friday with Bald and Curious. But I have yet to have ever seen a spotting scope that has a reticle that's an MOA reticle. So all of my equipment is mils. This has a mil ranging reticle in it. So it just makes sense. So if I look and I range a target, or if I see it on here, I can make the calls and corrections based on the reticles that I have available to me, whether it's a Bushnell or whether it's a Leopold. Hope that explains a little bit. Part 4 will be coming up next. Have a good night.